So John White here with the Luke 10 community. And this video, this recording is on what we call 2-minute appreciation stories. And I'm with two friends. I want to have them introduce themselves just briefly. So Tony, we'll start with you. Tell us just a little bit about who you are.
Oh, great. So I'm Tony Daniels, and I'm a coach and trainer with Communitas International. And I am also Luke 10 coordinator for the Spanish-speaking world.
And you live in Nashville these days, but you were a missionary for 18 years with your husband, Matt, in Uruguay.
Yes, correct.
Very good. Thank you. Kent?
Yes, I'm Kent Larson, and I'm a vineyard pastor, a senior associate pastor in Southern California. And I also am a life model personal coach as well, and do a lot of inner healing, counseling, and recovery counseling type of ministry. And I run a house of prayer and do some art ministry as well. So that's some of who I am.
And Luke 10 coordinator in Southern California.
Yes, and Luke 10 coordinator in Southern California.
Lots of hats you both wear.
Yes.
So this idea of a 2-minute appreciation story is something that, sorry about that, that both Tony and Kent have brought to us in Luke 10. It's a very simple but powerful concept that we want to make part of all of our Leader 101 groups. We have a growing number of leader teams, and we find this to be a really powerful way to start the Hangouts. And I've been in a couple of situations this week where Tony has explained what this is really well. And so I'm going to ask her to start out. And Tony, if you just tell us, what is a 2-minute appreciation story, and why is it important or valuable?
Great. Thanks, John. Kent and I have both been trained with Thrive and Life Model Works, and we both learned these appreciation stories there. So just to give them a little plug and credit for their work. A 2-minute appreciation story is important because as not just thinking about what we're thankful for, which is also amazing to do, but when we go into actually a story, it involves our entire body, mind, and soul. And it's a very holistic experience. So that's why we specifically focus on storytelling and 2-minute storytelling, just to keep it brief. So in a 2-minute appreciation story, what we're going to ask someone to do, or what I asked myself to do, is think about a moment or a memory when I was full of appreciation, just appreciation, no other emotions involved. So it could be, sometimes I express appreciation with words like gratitude. So maybe I was full of gratitude. Maybe I was thankful. That's another great word, a moment when I was thankful. Another word is a moment when I was in awe, just overwhelmed with, wow, this is amazing. So that type of sensation. So any memory when that happened to me. So I'm going to find a memory where that happened. And then I'm going to think specifically about how it made me feel emotionally, which is a lot of times hard because we don't talk about our feelings a lot, but I'm going to try to really put it into words. What did I feel? You know, did I feel grateful, thankful, appreciative, in awe, overwhelmed? You know, what is the word exactly that expresses what I was feeling? Maybe I felt appreciated as well. And then I'm going to think about what I was feeling physically in my body. And that's super hard for a lot of people because we've never had to think about our bodies before. But another way of asking that question for myself that helps is, okay, if I felt gratitude, what response did my body have to that feeling? So maybe I smiled, maybe I cried, maybe I hugged someone, maybe I breathed deeply and felt expansive physically. So that's a good way to get at that. What happened in my body when I felt that way, to answer that physical sensation question. So that's the 2-minute story. You think of the memory you had, and then you briefly tell just enough content to help other people understand what was going on in the story, and you include your body sensations and your emotions.
Okay, so clearly there's lots of biblical basis for this. I mean, we think about Psalm was at 103, enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. So entering into God's presence.
Yeah. It's
But
amazing because it's all in the Bible. And then even in Philippians again, in all things give thanks, and prayer even, we're supposed to be in an attitude of thankfulness. And then of course in Philippians 4, where it's meditate on all that is good and holy and right and just. And so again, that call to not just think of those things, but meditate on them, let them be the source of food for your brain all the time. And the amazing piece to that is that
One of
in
my
science,
experiences with it is just the amplifications in your body feelings, and you can amplify the gratitude.
say that one more time, Kent. You got interrupted a little bit there.
Okay. Well, so she was just mentioning in Philippians 4, where we not only are thankful, but then we think on whatever is good and lovely. So we're amplifying the good. So
Yeah.
amplifying it by describing your feelings, describing how your body felt, describing how you acted like yourself in that situation is one of the ways that that we just really increase our appreciation experience.
So it's the way that joy grows as we
Right.
identify it in that way. So hugely valuable for me individually. But we want to integrate this and maybe be a starting place for most of our leader hangouts, leader team hangouts. What happens in a group where people do this together? What's the benefit to the group and the individuals in the group?
Well, I'll just say it raises the joy level of the group. So just like if you're in a group and everyone's sharing how hard life is or how much trouble and trauma they're going through, you're going to have a very low joy identity as a group, and people are not going to be encouraged. But this sets a whole different atmosphere, and that's what we're after. We're after vibrant families of Jesus, full of joy and empowerment. And so that's it makes that difference. It really adds that.
if I
Good.
can add the
Yeah.
other piece that I was going to share was just that also when we're in appreciation, we can sense God's presence more clearly and more easily. So I believe that's why God in the Bible says over and over again, be in a state of thankfulness. Mainly it's because that's when we can sense him. So as a group as well, if we are practicing appreciation together, then we're raising our ability even as a group to sense his presence with us. And we're also increasing our capacity to endure hard things well, to lead well in hard times, because we're training our brains to look for appreciation in every moment because we're practicing it together.
So this is kind of training, isn't it? This is a habit, a spiritual habit that we're seeking to develop, again, individually, but also in all the leaders across all of the groups that Luke 10 is in relationship with.
Yes.
That's
And
right.
when our leaders apply it in their own families as well, then they're building the group identity in their family and building a joy base for their family system as well. So it just can go into every single group identity environment out there.
Yeah, and when you mention the concept of habit, one thing I think that what we've learned with a lot of the rhythms that we're working with is it's kind of the difference between a spiritual discipline and a habit is you do the spiritual discipline long enough that it just becomes automatic. It becomes a part of your lifestyle. It's how you respond to life. So that really can happen with gratitude, where your whole life is lifted when you build a habit of responding to everything by first sort of like your visceral immediate response is appreciation first, and then I'm going to deal with my other emotions. So it's very powerful to build that way.
So this, by starting our groups with these appreciation stories, really prepares the group for everything that's going to have to happen after that in the meeting. Listening to the Lord, connecting, really listening deeply to one another. So it's really critical for the success of that group. Say a word, would you, about how this would impact marriages as people begin to develop this as a habit. How does it impact a marriage?
Well, there's actually been a study done. I think it was UCLA that did a study for a number, it's like 30 years, and they evaluated all the characteristics of marriages that last long term. And the top one that came to the surface out of this very thorough scientific study was that appreciation was the key factor that sustained long-term marriage that build deep relationship and empowered that kind of a dynamic. So when you're consistently sharing appreciation stories and also appreciating your spouse in a marriage, it is it's one of the most powerful marriage builders of all.
Yeah, believe that.
Just
Tony, you were gonna
I was just gonna say a quick
comment.
story about that. Even just yesterday, my husband texted me and said, he was feeling sad. Some really rough things had happened at work and it wasn't going the way he had planned. And he was responsible for a lot of those things. And he was just sad. And I just texted him an appreciation story from the night before of us talking together and sharing together. And he wrote back and said, "Thank you for that. That made me feel so much better." And it just helped him endure the hard day he was having. So yeah, really practical.
Great example. Tony, you've shared a couple of really cool appreciation stories this week in Hangouts that we've been on. Could you pick one of those, whichever one you want to pick, and just kind of demonstrate for us what this would look like?
Sure. I really love this one because it's one of my favorites and I hold on to it a lot. But not a few years ago, I was walking into the mall with my 2.5-year old son, almost 3 at the time. And we were walking in the mall and just on the way to the mall in the parking lot, I just felt his little hand in my hand and it was so tiny. And it was weird because it was just one of those moments where I was fully present. And so I felt that the temporalness of that this was not going to last for long, that his hand would never be that size anymore. And tears came to my eyes and I just grabbed him even harder on the grip, and I just breathed deeply to take in every single moment. And then he started skipping and I just started skipping with him, and we skipped all the way in the mall laughing together and looking in each other's eyes. And I felt so satisfied as a mom, but just so thankful for that little life that I was able to cherish that day. And people thought we were crazy, but I didn't care. And it was just a wonderful moment of appreciation for his little life.
So that illustrates a couple of things. One is that an appreciation story can come from yesterday or it can come from years ago. A second thing is that you kind of develop a collection of these stories that you can enter into at any point, and it's a way of growing joy in your life. So let's do sort of any final comments that you guys would like to share about appreciation stories. So Tony, any closing comments? Or
just one last comment is that it really does bond the people that are sharing those stories together. And even that one, I tell my son that story at least once a year, maybe twice or 3 times a year, whenever it comes to me. And he giggles and he smiles and he goes like this. He feels so loved and appreciated. And how a little story like that can really bond us together. But it does. Our appreciation stories really do create bonds, healthy, joy-filled bonds.
It's among other things, a community builder too. So yeah, Kent, go ahead.
So I definitely experienced the community building. In fact, two quick things. One is I have a friend he's a medical doctor. He has an office staff, and they had significant conflict a few years ago, and we were learning about appreciations and the power of it, and telling stories like this. And at one point, he came in and he said, "I had a miracle this week. I sat down with my staff. There'd been so much division that I almost had to fire some people because there was so much conflict. I sat down and I basically had them sit in a circle, and I had them say one thing they appreciated about each person in the circle, and it so changed the relationship in our business that it's like night and day. I mean, it's a totally different atmosphere. Broke down all the division, stopped the bickering and the gossip and everything else simply by one time of appreciation. So it was very powerful, just expressing appreciation like that, even in a business situation. So that was delightful. And then just one other comment, and that is that the power of just consistently doing this in your life, it both builds relationships, but it builds you. I have a history personally where I struggled with depression that I have in the past, and just a lot of anxiety and depression. But learning this a few years ago has massively lifted me out of that cycle of response to life by simply building a habit of telling these stories, of remembering gratitude, of getting in touch with my emotions. And it really has changed the way I approach life and see life now. And I can easily return from those negative emotions back to a joyful or peaceful state of mind simply by the power of gratitude and appreciation. So I so am grateful for that.
So it's literally rewiring our brains as we practice this. So this is one of the rhythms or spiritual disciplines or habits that we are committed to in Luke 10. We use this on a regular basis in all of our leader teams, to the end that there might be vibrant families of Jesus on every block of every city in every country in the world. And at the heart of those, one of the things that makes them vibrant is this simple, very simple idea of telling appreciation stories. So I am appreciating being on the journey with you guys. Thank you for what you've shared today. We love you guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. You're such a blessing to us.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. Bye for now.